I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays, wherever you may be across this great country or this great land. We officially got news from the Big Ten that they were going to do what we basically all expected they would do, which is adjust the rules to allow Ohio State to advance to the Big Ten title game and be able to play against Northwestern, even though they are not playing this weekend against Michigan. So 5-0 Ohio State will be advancing to play against Northwestern. What's interesting maybe to me the most about this is that Northwestern has to play this weekend against Illinois, even though that game doesn't matter at all. So not only does Ohio State get to play in the Big Ten championship game, they get to get a bye. And they theoretically have the ability. They're going to be, 17, 18, 19, 20-point favorites, something like that, against Northwestern. So it would be a really big upset if Northwestern pulled off a win in the Big Ten title game. And effectively, Ohio State is now going to argue, if they win the Big Ten and they get to 6-0, that they are a playoff team. And they're probably right, because I think the most likely way that they could be left out, and indeed the only way that they could be left out of the college football playoff, is if Florida beats Alabama. And right now, by the way, the early lines are Florida is a 14-point underdog against Alabama. So it's a pretty substantial favorite in that game. And Clemson is around a 10-point favorite most recently that I've seen against Notre Dame. So the upset that you would really need to see pulled off would be Florida to beat Alabama. And then if that happened, and this, by the way, is presuming that Florida beats LSU and Alabama beats Arkansas this weekend. If that happened, then you would end up in a situation where Florida would get in alongside of Alabama. And then if Clemson beat Notre Dame, I think you'd get Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State would be left out. That's the only real way that I think definitely Ohio State wouldn't make the college football playoff, because then you also have Texas A&M and Ohio State. I've been arguing for a couple of weeks now that barring chaos, 4 of your 6 teams are going to come out of that scenario there. And so the decision has been made to change the rules, and Ohio State is the beneficiary of that decision to change the rules. So that is where we are in terms of the college football playoff. By the way, next week, we are scheduled on wins and losses to talk with Big Ten Commissioner Kevin Warren. So that should be an interesting conversation that if you haven't listened to the long-form conversations that we have, we've got about 40 of them out there. They're pretty outstanding if you're traveling for the holidays, if you're looking for something to escape everybody at your holiday events, whatever the case may be. Maybe you just got a little bit of extra time. Those 40 interviews and conversations, long form, are really, really good. And the idea is for them to be timeless. So that is on the horizon, that conversation. Okay, I'll bring in the crew and see what they think about that in a moment. The other thing is, and look, I love the humor in this. LSU, who is 3-5 and about to go to 3-6 when they lose to Florida in 2 days, Saturday in Gainesville, self-imposed a bowl ban yesterday. I just love the absolute ridiculousness of that so much. In the SEC, oh, hey, we're LSU. Last year we went 15-0. We won the national championship, but we violated some rules, and we're about to be 3-6, and we might even lose the final game of the season against Ole Miss and fall to 3-7. But we are going to fall on our sword and ban ourselves from going to a bowl game. Now, some people are like, well, they wouldn't qualify for a bowl game anyway. No, everybody's going to qualify for a bowl game pretty much that wants to go. Even if you are awful, you're going to have an opportunity probably to play in a bowl game. So, like the SEC, for instance, Tennessee is going to go, whatever it is, 3-7, assuming they beat Vanderbilt and lose to Texas A&M. They're going to go to a bowl game. Might be the Birmingham Bowl. Might be the Music City Bowl. Who knows exactly where they would go, but they're going to go. So there are a lot of bad teams this year that are still going to go to a bowl game, and that's going to be effectively the 11th game of their season. So the bowls are happening to a large extent. So LSU would have gone to a bowl, but it would have been a bowl that they probably wouldn't have really had any interest in playing in anyway. After you go win the national championship, playing, no offense, in Shreveport is not exactly we got to be there kind of event. So I just love the ridiculousness of LSU self-imposing a bowl ban, sitting at 3-5, about to go to 3-6 in 2 days, and potentially going to finish at 3-7 on the year. Wow, what a move by LSU. All right, we got a loaded show for you, by the way. We're going to talk to Frank Isola next. Then we got Jeff Schwartz in hour 2. Third hour of the show, we're going to talk to Dr. David Chow, but also a special edition of the Animal Thunderdome. We are scheduled to talk with the Florida man who saved his puppy from an alligator. If you haven't seen that video, he was out walking his puppy. An alligator attacks. We need to just grab that video and share it again before we talk with him. An alligator grabs his puppy and attacks him. He goes into the water after the alligator, goes under the water, keeps his cigar in his mouth the whole time, pries the alligator's mouth open, gets his puppy out, and wrestles the alligator. Now, it wasn't a big alligator. It wasn't like this was Happy Gilmore, and we got like the people's elbow onto the top of the alligator, but it's still a pretty impressive achievement. So, that is where the show is headed. We got a lot coming your direction, but I'll bring in the crew. What is the overall reaction to the decision to cancel the existing rules and go ahead and modify them and allow Ohio State to get into the college football playoff? Were you surprised by the decision, Danny G?
Zero surprise, especially working on this show. You know, I'm a huge NFL fan, a casual college football fan, and I've learned a lot more about college football in the past 4+ years working on this show. But every single morning, everybody on this show has pretty much said, Ohio State's going to get in no matter what, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I asked, that's been the expectation. I asked you guys yesterday, right after this news came out that they were doing it, do you agree with the Big Ten's decision to change the rules to allow Ohio State to play in the Big Ten title game? 59% of you, 44, almost 45,000 of you voted. 59% of you said no, you did not agree with the decision. 41% of you said you did agree with the decision. So let me ask you that way. Do you agree with the decision?
I kind of feel indifferent. Like, I took a couple of VIP calls off the air yesterday because we were already done talking about the topic.
Yeah.
And I think it was Mike in Modesto, and he told me, Danny, this is what the Big Ten gets, and I want Ohio State and them to, just fall in their own mess. And I think that part of the country feels that way. So it is interesting how it all played out. But, I mean, you guys you and Dub have talked about it several times on the show. You need Ohio State in that game for the Big Ten. But I don't, personally, as a football fan, I don't like the way it played out. I would have much rather watched a play-in game versus A&M.
So, 100%. I would rather watch that game. There's no doubt.
Yeah, as a football fan, this is anticlimactic.
The reason why I don't have any problem with it on the grand scheme of things is they were 5-0. If they had played against Michigan, they would have won the Big Ten, win or lose. So that game didn't matter in terms of deciding who was going to play for the college football championship in the Big Ten, because Indiana had their game against Purdue canceled as well. So I believe I'm correct. Indiana is sitting at 5-1. And so given the fact that Ohio State beat them head-to-head, if Ohio State had played that game against Michigan, which obviously Michigan was canceling it, not Ohio State, then they would have qualified for the Big Ten title game at 5-1, even if they had lost. Now, here's my larger scale issue. We have heard for years the College Football Playoff Committee denigrate Notre Dame's playoff chances by saying they only play 12 games. They don't play a conference championship game, right? How many times have you heard that argument over the years if you're a Notre Dame fan? In other words, the difference between playing 12 games and playing 12 games plus a conference championship game was seismic in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee. Well, now Ohio State is going to play 6 games compared to the 11 from Alabama, Florida, and Notre Dame. And yet, you're going to tell me that 6 games is not a functional issue compared to 11? Like, that seems pretty massive to me. Those schools are playing almost twice as many games as Ohio State, and they're playing all conference games. So it's not like there's easy guaranteed wins set up there. And so, the idea that you're going to judge a team on 6 games compared to a team that played 11 seems to me pretty wild, to be quite frank. And I also think it's going to be an intriguing decision for the College Football Playoff Committee because I think the 4 most likely teams to make it are Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. But I don't think the College Football Playoff Committee is going to want a third matchup of Clemson and of Notre Dame, especially just whatever it is, 12 days after that game has been played. So I wonder on some level what exactly is going on there. By the way, I'm going to keep beating this drum. I haven't seen anybody else even talking about it, and maybe I'll get into it tomorrow when we don't actually have any as many guests maybe. But this is crazy to me. Why is no one talking about the college football playoff games being set in LA at the Rose Bowl and in New Orleans at the Superdome? 2 places that are not allowing any crowds at all. Why wouldn't they relocate the college football playoff games so that they can allow fans to be present in some venues? For instance, I'm just tossing this out there. Why wouldn't you relocate the Rose Bowl to Dallas, where they're putting, tens of thousands of fans in Jerry Jones's arena, the Dallas Cowboys football stadium, and play the playoff game in Dallas so that fans can go watch it? And why wouldn't you relocate the game out of New Orleans and play the game in, let's say, Atlanta, where fans are allowed to go watch games as well? And I'm just tossing those 2 stadiums out because they're indoor venues, so you wouldn't have to worry about the weather at all. And you have the ability to have fans present. Is no one else thinking about this? I'm not even sure that by January 1st, California is going to allow football games to be played anywhere in the state. But even if they are, what's the point of a Rose Bowl game without any crowds allowed for the playoff at all when you could relocate it? And maybe you want to stay in the West Coast. Okay, relocate it to Arizona, right? Relocate it somewhere where they have basically indoor allowances, but where they can actually have fans present. That seems like a no-brainer to me. Does that make sense to you, Dub, that like you would – well, we'll get into that maybe in a little bit, but your thoughts first on the decision to let Ohio State in.
Well, it was the only decision that was going to happen. I mean, if you put yourself in their shoes, that's the decision you're going to make. I understand people don't think it's fair that Ohio State with only 5 wins, and we ran through their schedule yesterday, how pretty much weak and almost pathetic some of those games are.
Yeah.
But you have to put them in. They're the best team in the Big Ten. If you don't put them in, I think there's probably even more criticism today and tomorrow and in the future. And I think it's the right thing to do. You need Ohio State there and give them a chance to represent your conference in the college football playoff. It's as simple as that.
What do you think about it, Eddie?
This was the only outcome that I thought was going to happen. If I'm the Big Ten, I'm obviously going to do what's best for my conference. We haven't even really mentioned in the era of COVID and all the lost revenue, this is millions of dollars for the Big Ten. If they get a team into the Final Four, they're going to get, as a conference, millions of dollars. So, of course, they're going to do what's best for them.
I think it's a little bit over $2 million per school that they redistribute if Ohio State makes the playoff.
Exactly. And so there was no doubt in my mind this was going to happen. But I have said it to you before, and this is kind of talking about what Danny G had said with the conversation with some of the VIP members. It just really bothers me that Ohio State and their leadership, in air quotes, made the ridiculous decisions that they made because they wanted to get pats on the back from the media that we were going to put the athletes first and health over dollars and all this. And then they made the dumb decision to leave themselves no wiggle room. And in the end, it looks like it's still going to work out for them.
That's well said. I mean, it's not going to work out for the Pac-12 who followed the Big Ten's lead. Like, hey, we're jumping off this bridge. You coming? And the Pac-12 was like, yeah, I can't wait. It's like, it reminds me of when I was a kid and, some other kid would do something that was dumb and your mom would inevitably say, it seems like it's always the mom who points this out. Well, if so-and-so jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge too? Or, whatever that analogy that they're using. Maybe it's not bridge jumping, but something ridiculous that another kid did. And so you can't point to them and say, that's the reason you did it. That's the Pac-12. Like, at least the Big Ten made their own decision. The Pac-12 saw the Big Ten jump off a bridge, and then they were like, well, that seems like a good decision. I'm going to jump off the bridge too. And then they came back later even than the Big Ten did. And honestly, it's as if the Pac-12 season doesn't even exist. The same situation's happening for USC, by the way, although nobody's paying attention to it. USC, if they beat UCLA on Saturday in the Rose Bowl.
Oh, is that this week?
I think it's this weekend. Like, I didn't even realize.
Exactly.
I gambled on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I gambled on it the other day. I was like, oh, this game's going on. They are going to be in the Pac-12 title game at 5-0, which is the exact same situation that Ohio State's going to be in. Ohio State just has so much more hype that people are aware of that. And honestly, I'm not even sure you can argue that Ohio State has played a better schedule than USC. It's just nobody pays attention to the Pac-12. So, Roberto, are you surprised by this result? Was it the right choice?
No, I'm not surprised. The Big Ten was going to do ultimately what's best for its conference. The conference was terrible. It's been terrible as a whole this year, so I knew they were going to put Ohio State in there without a doubt.